Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson are the creators of Swamp Thing, and since Swamp Thing does enter my top 10 DC characters, I was actually really excited to review this absolute edition of the very first run and creation of this character. And reading this for the first time, it is really interesting. I'll be the first to admit that the 50s, 60s, 70s dialogue is usually not for me. There are exceptions, something like the awesome Moon Knight worked really well for me, but for the most part, they just don't hold up in my eyes. 80s can be a little bit tricky as well, and the 90s can be tricky too, just because of the quality. 2000s onwards is really the sweet spot for me in terms of the dialogue and how it's written and, you know, more show, don't tell. So I was a little hesitant on picking this up, but I did so just because I wanted to see where the Swamp Thing began. And interesting enough, it's not without its faults. The dialogue is cheesy and overly done. There's a lot of telling instead of showing going on, which was really common in comics back then. And each issue is pretty much a standalone with a very thin layer of overarching plotting going on in the background. But what works is that it's so damn charming. The way we're introduced to Alec and, you know, his trials and tribulations that he has to go through, his disturbing death and the faith of his wife, and, you know, just living as this creature, as the Swamp Thing forever is actually pretty horrifying if you think about it. However, it all works, and the more campy, silly moments actually made this really enjoyable to read. But one really strong positive that helped boost this for me, even more so than the writing, is the art. Now, the art is really special. The art is recolored here to give it a more modern look. However, it very much feels like Bernie's style. This doesn't like alter it to the point where I'm like, what's happening? Why did they change this? It still looks like it was set in that time period. It just looks cleaned up, and Swamp Thing looks a little bit moodier and darker. But what I really liked is that it still captured the essence of what his art style was, because Swamp Thing can change like on a dime from being this horrifying looking villain to this adorable, innocent looking person, and I just love that. I love that we can change a monster and make me feel for him in the next panel. The tone is very much Monster of the Week style, and I love that he builds that with his art. He complements Len's lengthy script with still showcasing the art, and I have to say that the Absolute Edition here that you're reading really does help that in a tremendous way, because it's so much bigger that you really get to see the artwork showcased really well. So for me, this is a really fun read. It's only 13 issues, but I think that's okay because, as I said, this is the old dialogue, so sometimes it takes a little while to get through one issue. Usually I can shoot through a graphic novel in less than 30 minutes. This took me a few days. Now, I did take my time with it. I really like to look at the panels with the art, but I have to say that this is, you know, an absolute. So you're expecting 13 issues, but a nice lengthy 13 issues you got here, and this is the start of Swamp Thing, so it is something special. So for me, I'm gonna have to give it a rating of a 4 out of 5. I just really enjoyed my time reading this. Even the more campy parts I really enjoyed. It was only like 1 or 2 issues where I kind of felt it was a little overly done or a little too stupid for me to really enjoy, but I mean, 13 issues, 11 of them being really good or great. Come on, that's a good value, at least in my opinion. So, should you pick this up? Well, I think if you're a Swamp Thing fan, you probably already did. But if not, I think it absolutely is worth picking up. You can put it right in there with the Absolute Swamp Things from Alan Moore. Same style on the casing, which is awesome. It looks great over there. And I hope you guys do check this out if you're a Swamp Thing fan. If you do like old, campy, kind of Saturday morning cartoon style comics, this is right up your alley. Go pick it up. And again, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5 for Absolute Swamp Thing.